So we're just talking about, we're like, oh, something, me and Jason are in charge of the city if something happened last night.
We're all acting.
We were
You
like,
were really
well,
excited
it said
about
Brenda's
that, huh?
really running the city.
Jason ain't in charge of anything but mowing.
Okay, we are on air and it's 10 seconds to 5:30 and Councilman Foreman I don't think is coming and we're the only four left here in town right now. So we'll go ahead and get started with the City Council study session for Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. And we have one item on the agenda, a discussion regarding the FYE 2025 Capital Improvements Program budget and the FYE 2022 through 2028 Capital Improvements Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I will turn it over to Jacob Huckabee, who is our capital budget officer, and he'll lead the presentation this evening. We have several of the project managers in the room to answer questions.
Perfect. All right, so as you said, we're going to talk about the FYE 25 Capital Improvement Program budget. You should have received the budget documents, and they're available online as well. So just to kind of recap where we're at in the CIP process, back in November, we kind of got the process started, talking about some updates for some previously funded projects, and also kind of getting an idea from discussion on some of the council priorities for the upcoming CIP. In February, we discussed some of the proposed projects and the various project requests that we received to go talk about if these were going to be priorities for the FYE 25 CIP. And today, we're going to be talking about the final preliminary plan for the FYE 25 CIP. So all the funds that are included in the CIP budget, we have the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund, the CDBG Fund, the Special Grants Fund, Room Tax Fund, Public Transportation and Parking Fund, the Capital Fund, both the pay-go sales tax portion and the general obligation bond portion, the Norman Forward Sales Tax Fund, the Parkland and Development Fund, the University North Park Tax Increment Finance District Fund, the Center City Tax Increment Finance District Fund, and the Arterial Road and Recoupment Fund. Also in the CIP are the enterprise funds. We won't be talking about these today. They're going to have their own separate session on May 21st. So we'll discuss where those funds are and some of the projects in those as well. So some of the funds that don't have any CIP projects this year, any new CIP project appropriations, that's going to be the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund, the Special Revenue Fund, the Public Transportation Fund, Westwood Fund, the New Development Excise Tax Fund, the Parkland Development Fund, the University North Park TIF Fund, the Center City TIF Fund, and the Arterial Road Recoupment Fund. The first one that has some proposed projects in it is the CDBG Fund. This is going to be the FYE 25 Habitat for Humanity land acquisition for $40,000 and the FYE 25 Norming Housing Authority land acquisition project for $100,000. In the Room Tax Fund, we have one project, which is the Westwood Tennis Center Improvements Project. This is just going to be a project that's going to be geared toward making sure those courts and the facilities are up to date to be able to host certain tennis events, things like that, working on lighting and resurfacing the court to keep it updated to those standards. Moving on to the Capital Fund. So this is a slide talking about where we're at with the Capital Fund regarding how much we have kind of left over in this pay-go portion to pay for some new projects. So in FYE 25, taking all of the projected revenue and subtracting all of the proposed expenditures, we're projecting around $188,000 of sales tax capital funds that could be used towards some new projects this year. So going over the guidelines that we use for the capital fund, historically, these have remained pretty constant. Last year, we changed the maintenance of existing facilities proportion from 5% to 7%, reducing the general contingency down to 5%. This is to make up for some of the increased square footage in facilities like the YFAC and the Adult Wellness and Education Center. And this year, the management team decided to put together a 5% allocation for information technology infrastructure. There's quite a few big IT projects that are coming up, getting all of our city operations up to date and more safe. And so they wanted to go ahead and make sure that we were allocating an appropriate amount in the capital fund to cover these big projects. The proposal is to take that 5% from the street maintenance portion. This will not be a reduction in the amount of street maintenance work that is done. All of these allocations are pretty consistent with what was before the street maintenance bond program. And so once that kicked in, those bond funds were really carrying the majority of the street maintenance work that were being done. And so this won't be a reduction in the street maintenance projects. It'll just be more accurately reflecting what the actual allocations are, and including the new information technology portion.
So to be clear, we have our street maintenance bond that's voter approved.
Yes.
Every 5 years. And then we have a budget for street maintenance that's separate that we're talking about right here.
Yes, and
On
that's
top of
funded
that.
by sales tax as well. Okay, so some of the proposed recurring sidewalk projects that are in the budget. First, we have the sidewalks and trails and the sidewalks for schools and arterials. These are two separate projects, with the sidewalks and trails proposing $140,000 and the schools and arterials proposing $100,000. So both of these projects are going to be focusing on the same area along Mimosa Drive. It's going to be the south side from Peters to Stubman, for a total of $240,000 on this location. The sidewalk accessibility project was proposing $45,000 for the Main Street and Creekdale Drive north side. The citywide sidewalk project, this is the 50-50 split project, is proposing $125,000. The downtown area sidewalk project is proposing $50,000 for Crawford Avenue and Dawes Street ramps and sidewalks, some ramps along South Webster Avenue, and ramps along the north side of the post office. And the horizontal saw cut program proposing $40,000 for continuing work along Berry Road for a
And
total of
the-
$500,000.
The project on Mimosa, is that the existing project that's already finished, or is that an additional project that's on Mimosa?
It's the continuation of that project, continue on the south side, complete some of the portions on the north side. And then if any funding is left over, we'll come back to CPT and propose where we could spend the remainder of that funding for the year. We just weren't sure how much was going to be needed to finish up that project.
Thank you. Councilmember Schuler? Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so this slide is just kind of talking about some more upcoming sidewalk projects that are not in the current budget document that you see, but just some that our staff are currently working on. We have the Lindsay Street sidewalk, which is along 12th Avenue Southeast to 24th Avenue Southeast. This is a $1 million sidewalk project with a federal grant covering 80%. A sidewalk project along 12th Avenue Northeast. This is from Robinson to Rock Creek and from Brook Street to Wiley Road and Pickard. This is another $1 million project with a federal grant covering 80%. And the Flood Avenue Multimodal Path project. This is a $2 million project from Robinson to Tecumseh with a federal grant funding 20% of this project. And so those, as well as the proposed funded recurring sidewalk projects, would be about $4.5 million of sidewalks that are currently being worked on and designed throughout the fiscal year 24 and 25. So some proposed recurring projects in FY 25. We have the capital outlay at $4.2 million. In street maintenance, this is the sales tax portion. We have $2.8 million, which also includes the Reeve Avenue improvements project as well. We have the maintenance of existing facility projects, that's at 7% at $1.2 million. The stormwater drainage maintenance projects at $2.4 million. Personnel costs at $1.2 million. The ODOT audit adjustments project at $100,000. The bridge maintenance project at $1 million, which is the separate sales tax funded project that is separate from the new bridge maintenance bond program. The driveway repair program for $10,000. The ADA compliance program for $300,000. The street striping project for $100,000. traffic calming for $50,000, and community neighborhood improvements for $100,000, for a total of $13.7 million in recurring projects in the capital fund.
What traffic calming are we actually doing? For 50,000, what are we?
So those would be projects we brought up by the community. Those are obviously, when those come up, those are citizen-led by petition by the property owners in the area. They have to have a certain percentage to meet the requirements. So that funding is there. So if there's a proposal that's requested and it meets and they make all the requirements, we have funding available to go out and perform that work as requested at that time. So no, it's not dedicated to a project at this time. It's there available should there be a need and a location to use that funding.
Councilmember Schuler?
Yeah, related to this, the permanent kind of like signals that show you, that we've been putting up in like various places, kind of like what the school, in the school zones where it shows you what your speed is that, does that come out of that
That's
amount?
one location that we can fund that from.
Okay, because I know that some of them in my area have been citizen-led, but didn't require a petition or any of those kinds of things because it was deemed as something that was necessary.
Sure, and I think a lot of those were in school zones, so
Yeah.
we made it appropriate in the school zones.
Okay.
Councilmember Balders?
Oh, no, good, that,
Okay, I have I guess, questions about the possible sources for central library funding. Can we talk
That's a-
about that?
That's an Anthony asterisk. And where we are going to be looking for money for not just the Central Library project, but any other projects the council might want to add. That was some kind of low-hanging fruit that I thought about where we're going to have the ongoing bond-funded bridge maintenance projects. I thought you might free up some of that bridge maintenance money. Thought you might want to free up that community project money. Again, just a thought, but we know that we're going to have that big library repair project. And we're just thinking of places where we might find money for projects the council might want to add.
And just to, I guess, get it out on the table, that is so that we can upfront the repair costs and then potentially recoup on the back end with the litigation or whatever
Potentially.
happens with all of that. Okay, I'd like to hear from staff based on those two projects. I know for bridge maintenance, yes, we have the bond and it's, $50 million and there's lots of things, but there are so many needs for bridges. And we've seen this, I think, consistently over the last several years that I've been on council. We have increased it every year because things come up. And so like, what are you planning to use that money for in this next fiscal year? And what does it do outside of just the $50 million that we're going to like do a whole chunk of repair, replacement, all that kind of stuff?
Certainly. So those two programs are a lot like our street maintenance bond program, where the street maintenance bond is more like upkeep of what we have. And then we have the capital improvement program, the capital projects, which are the larger projects where the streets actually be rebuilt, widened, or new amenities put in on that street. So these two programs work in a very similar fashion. The bridge maintenance is going out, taking care of maybe the scour around a bridge, or the riprap is all gone, and we're going to come in and fix that, place new riprap so that it's not washing out, so that it doesn't become a bigger problem in the future. In some places, we're working behind the wing walls to make sure that those aren't going to fail. We've also done some, the approach slab, which is kind of where you transition from the road to the bridge. We've gone in and been able to do some repairs on that, and also some deck repair. So we've done a lot of repair with that, and then again, the idea of that funding is so the bridges don't become in such a bad state of repair that we do have to go in and have a big project to do either a rehab or a replacement, which is what the bridge bond maintenance is for. So we do view these as separate programs. We have done a lot of great work with this bridge maintenance program. We've been able to take some bridges that were pretty low scoring, and just by doing the little things and spending, $60,000, $70,000 and even less in some cases, been able to bring those bridges and really increase the scores from sometimes in the 60s up into the 70s and 80s. So it's a good program. It's something that if we needed to, we could always discuss further if it was worth suspending for 1 year. We'd like to continue the program, but if we realize there's other needs in the community that need to be met too. So I wouldn't want to give that up long-term, But if we needed to, or if we needed to take some of the money there to be able to meet other needs, it's something we could definitely look at and discuss and just pare back or suspend the program for a year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really concerned about moving that money because I think that it's been so critical to the upkeep and, you know, maintenance of our bridges now. And the reason that we're doing the $50 million bond program is because we've gotten so far behind in doing those things. And then we get to this critical stage where we're shutting bridges down, which have happened in the last 3 years, multiple bridges. And so finding emergency funding, I think, is more difficult than trying to do this. So I'm a little
Well, I think that we've been able.
concerned about moving that, but
And I certainly appreciate that and agree with that, but I do think that we've been able to address some of our most immediate needs. And we could, like I said, we could discuss this further and make some decisions there if need be.
okay. And then, which department is responsible for community and neighborhood improvements?
That's me.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa.
So the annual appropriation of $100,000 came about with the neighborhood planning process. As that was being developed, we needed a revenue source to be able to identify small projects that were identified through those plans. As we've kind of taken care of the low-hanging fruit in those plans, we've been utilizing this in conjunction with the CDBG funding to address small problems within the neighborhoods that are identified. Small section of gap, sidewalk funding, minor park repairs. Currently, we're hoping to do a lighting project in First Courthouse, Original Town Side, and Old Silk Stocking. 2 years ago, we almost had enough money to do it, and then some funds were appropriated to deal with a drainage problem in conjunction with the now. And so it's finally getting built back up where we can do a project. So I think currently it has about $270,000 in it. It's about a $400,000 project that we're going to be needing to do.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I know if Councilmember Grant was here that they would be really sad to lose this money, especially in those neighborhoods. And I understand that we have some real challenges with the central library and trying to figure out how we're gonna fund those repairs. I don't even know that we have a cost estimate at this point on what even we're looking at. So I appreciate you trying to identify some places. I just think it's always hard to cut things that we know are.
Yeah, and I don't want to mean to imply that these are not important projects.
Sure.
But there's some priorities gonna have to be.
Yeah, we're gonna have to think through and have discussions about that. So I appreciate just thinking through and hearing from staff what's planned and what we might have to give up for a year if we need to move money around.
So some more proposed projects in the capital fund. We have this 5% allocation for the IT hardware and software upgrades, with the hardware getting $600,000 and the software getting $275,000. We have the Reed Avenue curb and gutter project, $550,000. We have the RTA proportion that we pay for $215,000. The GIS mapping update for $225,000. The network switch replacement program for $210,000. The Parkside amenities and furnishing project for $45,000. The tree program for $65,000. Historical markers project for $30,000. Monument signs for $225,000. The Tecumseh flood and Robinson wayfinding project for $240,000. And the Highway 9 multimodal path from 48th to 72nd for $529,000.
Councilmember Taylor?
The historical markers, that's the program that we've been doing for the last couple of years, right? They've been identified to kind of go up in various places. Do we know what the identified places are for this upcoming fiscal year?
We have a committee. We've got 5 signs erected so far. We've got 2 more identified, and there's 2 more. There's funding for 2 more that we have marked right now.
Okay, so the committee is making decisions from there. Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Ball?
For the IT hardware, the 5%, and I think on the pie chart you showed earlier, it showed that we're increasing the spending on that. Does that have anything to do with the new Emergency Management Operations Center? Or is that all fully Because I know that's gonna be a lot of IT.
That's a
and everything
separately
there.
funded, that's
Yeah.
primarily a grant-funded project, but this is ongoing IT hardware replacement that we know we're gonna have to do, replacing Windows, replacing the servers and those sorts of things.
Okay.
All right, and so also we have a brief overview of the bond programs and their appropriations for FYE '25. In the 2021 street maintenance bond program, we have just under $5.5 million of appropriations being proposed. In the 2019 transportation bond program, we have just under $6.7 million in projects being proposed. And in the 2023 bridge maintenance bond program, we have $2.4 million in appropriations being proposed for that program as well. And then here, these are just a few of the capital fund requests that we had received from council previously. Just wanted to give an opportunity if there's any more discussion needed on these. These are not currently in the budget, but these were requests that staff had received. We had the Bishop Creek Rehabilitation Project, the Main Street two-way conversion, Cedar Lane Road Extension Project, the Classen and Post Oaks Signalization Project, the Alameda, Crawford, and Apache Intersection Study, and the Main and Wiley Signalization.
What's the 2 million for the Cedar Lane? I remember the 22 from the presentation last year. What's the 2 million for?
I believe that was to basically start the design process.
Okay. I've had a recent discussion with a developer about that project and the county being involved or potentially and what it might cost. So that one, I'm interested in what design that might be and what options are. So I might bring that one up in CPTC again sometime soon. But I was curious about what the 2 million, if that was just designed for.
That would just be a design, that'd be what we approximate the cost of the design would be for that project. It's multiple projects, it actually winds up being 5 or 6 projects, not one
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
Of course, you just want one consultant on it, you wouldn't want to divvy that out, you'd want to keep it contiguous with one consultant to keep it smoother. But that's to get the design contracts.
And that would include, if I recall the presentation last year, it was improving Jenkins from Highway 9 to where Cedar Lane would connect to it, and probably even a bit further south. And then a new intersection where it would meet, and then a bridge across Bishop Creek. And so that was it's 2 big projects actually, because it can't be done without improving Jenkins, is the way I
Yeah,
understand it.
so you're correct. It had all the items you just listed as well as some changes at the intersection at Jenkins and Highway 9 to make that flow better. And also the Cedar Lane isn't completed out. So it didn't make sense to do part of the road and leave the oldest part of the road not up to date. So we included that in all of it. So the whole corridor would be up to date. It would be modern. We wouldn't be trying to phase it in over a long time, where it would be one really well-flowing system, not patchworks.
Would you anticipate Cedar Lane being a 3 or 4 lane section?
We would look at that and discuss that when we got to it. There's opportunities there to maybe look at it as a 3-lane with acceleration and deceleration lanes going in and out of the neighborhoods. With there not being as much on the north side, that kind of makes that maybe work better. We really haven't investigated that at this time as to how that would work. Currently it's designed to be a 4-lane, but we could, when we got closer and we got to design this, we could ask our design consultant to look at for us. It doesn't really change the shape or the size of the bridge very much, because we'd still need to have appropriate bike lanes and pullover space, but it doesn't, so minor changes on that, but it could change the cost on the roadways.
And I recall Cedar Lane where it would connect to Jenkins being a bit of a challenge.
So there's a lot of issues there. There's oil battery there. There's overhead power lines. The way that the Bratcher Minor and the road going down to the police firing range, the way that all comes together there isn't quite right. And now we have a solar array in the way too. So we've actually added to the complications of that location, not made them better, but that would be something that would take a lot of investigation and deciding how we're gonna handle that area.
Okay, I appreciate that. Councilmember Schuler?
Just for clarification, the two signalization projects on here that have 100,000 next to them, would that just be for, I mean, because we don't know yet what each of those would cost?
Those
So
are
that's like
design,
design,
that's design fees.
yeah.
And then with that, we would be able to go and try to see if we could get matching funds through ODOT possibly for those, or if not, we would know and be able to fund them or start asking for funding for future years.
Okay, but both of those are identified by your team as needing potential upgrades to
Yes.
signalization. So we know that they're in the pipeline, we know that it's a need, but it's trying to figure out when and the timing and funding and all that kind of
Timing and
stuff.
funding,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. So these are all the things that we've requested, and so they're not currently in the budget, so we would have to lose things in the current proposed budget to fit these in.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, just for everyone's clarification. Yeah, we'd have to amend the budget and then find ways to fund these out of different, I mean, basically choosing different priorities.
Yeah. And for me, I'd say the Post Oak signalization, can't do it without ODOT approval since it's on Highway 77. We've been talking about it for years. Maybe it will happen with the RV park and all that stuff going in, but. And then I get a lot of questions about Alameda, Crawford, and Apache intersection. I think it'd be a nice spot for a roundabout, but it's kind of weird because it's a two-way stop, but it's a 5-leg intersection, so it's some people don't know if they're supposed to stop or if they're supposed to keep going. And it's so anyway, and then with the Cedar Lane thing, the design of that too. We don't have any identified program to actually do that project. So, the next opportunity would be 2028 or 9 when we potentially try to renew the street enhancement bond. So I don't know that. I don't know. I'm not necessarily in a hurry to spend $2 million designing it yet, but I think it is a necessary project. It will be needed in the future. As that area grows, it's already needed when there's a emergency down there and the traffic gets real crazy trying to get out of Highway 9. But that is a lot of money to do a design, so especially we don't have any identified project to actually do it. So maybe we will, and we'll see how that conversation goes. Okay?
So onto the Norman Forward Fund, there's just two projects that are proposing funding in FY '25. It's the Neighborhood Park Improvements Project for $650,000 and the lease payments for the Griffin land at $80,000. I believe there was a recommendation recently from the Norman Forward CFOB to move those to the general fund from the Norman Forward Fund. Also in the Norman Forward Fund, we had the 3 debt service payments that we wanted to include. The 2015 bonds are just at around 5.9 million. The 2017 bonds are at 2.5 million, and the 2020 bonds are at $1.19 million.
Councilmember Schuler?
I don't know if Anthony wants to talk about the payments for Griffin land, moving to the general fund. Like, I guess I read the proposal or the recommendation from the Norman Forward Committee, but I mean, since we are trying to buy that land as well, I guess what is your interpretation of all of?
Yeah, all of the lease payments that we have made and that we're proposing to make here would apply to the purchase. I basically think that the Citizens Financial Oversight Board was looking for ways to save money in the Norman Forward Fund. But again, it's totally your decision, their recommendation, but
I mean, because it was always intended for this money to come out of Norman Forward, and it is a Norman Forward project and all those kinds of things. So I guess everyone's trying to save money. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, lastly, we just have some upcoming and current challenges to think about in this budget cycle and some future budget cycles. We have the I-35 corridor study, the Access Oklahoma Turnpike plan, and the implications that could have if that goes through. the public transportation, we have the RTA developing and the various recommendations from the transit study.
We'll have a update on the RTA at the CPTC this month with our representatives on the board and potentially Governor Henry, so we'll see.
We also have fleet replacement, it's an ongoing need, stormwater infrastructure as well, the fleet fueling facility needing repairs to keep that facility up and running, the sidewalk gaps throughout town, the AIM Norman land use and master plan updates and the recommendations that will come with those, the implementation of the North Base master plan, the purchase and possible redevelopment of the Griffin Hospital land, Griffin Park land, the Rock Creek Entertainment District TIF proposal, the Center City TIF fund and utilizing that fund balance based on the recommendations from that recent implementation plan, the police department building B improvements with them moving into occupying more of that space as well, getting that building improved, and the central library repair as well.
I would just remind everybody about the North Base master plan that we got an update on a few months ago, and how it showed us that the longer we waited, it could balloon up to $1 billion to do it all, so. And that's the stuff that keeps the city running on a day-to-day basis, so think about that too, on top of everything else.
Yeah, just know that taken together, this is in the tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And then the police department, I know some things need to be done to it while they're still in it, if we decide if we're building a new one or whatever. So would this be just basic things that need to be done now that the space is not occupied anymore?
Those outside of ongoing facility maintenance things, when we have sewer issues and stuff, this request specifically is the stuff needed to get us into municipal court and to repurpose the space downstairs when dispatch leaves this summer. So things like access control and delineating lobby spaces and things like that to repurpose the courtroom to some functional space beyond just a bank of chairs.
Yeah.
That runs about $50,000-ish to get that all done. Doing the minimal work we possibly can until eventually the building is completely redone or bulldozed or whatever that becomes down the road.
Okay. Councilmember Schuler?
What's the status of the public safety study?
They're supposed to have it back, I believe, in the next month or two. This summer is still the last update I heard, although always subject to change. But hopefully this summer.
Okay.
June was the last date that she gave us.
Okay. So that will give us more indication of what proposal we'll need for, thinking about a new police station or multiple, or how we want to configure.
Yeah, we
all
anticipate
of that.
that, for both the fire department and the police department, should give us indications and animal welfare as well for that long term. Do we have an east-west split? Do we redo the building? This is focused on that interim of what do we do
Right.
to occupy, because right now that space is sitting empty.
Perfect.
All right, so finally, just looking at the next steps in the CIP process, we just have the council considering the budget for adoption in June. So everything else has been covered in the CIP process so far. And that's all that I have today. So if there's any remaining questions or comments?
So we've decided that that's the date?
That's the majority has said that, yes.
Okay.
I still haven't heard from a couple though. These two.
So 4 weeks from today. Any comments or questions?
Did a great job.
Thanks. Okay. Let's see, I had one that I was thinking about. Several of the funds we talked about in finance, like transit and Norman Ford, are not needing general fund subsidies for anything.
That's correct.
Okay, that's really the only thing I was really thinking about. Nothing final? Okay, if that's it, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.